Welcome to another episode of the Move, Talk, Thrive podcast. Today, Emily and I are exploring leadership. So, we are on a journey to help and create future leaders within our business and our industries. So, today we're going to share the things that we've learned over the last 15 years on our way from being new grads all the way up into leadership positions and owning our own businesses. So let's get stuck in.
I'm Lizzy Dawson, Australian exercise physiologist.
I'm Emily Mackey, Australian speech pathologist.
And this is the Move, Talk, Thrive podcast.
Okay, big one. This excites me because I love leadership.
Yeah, I do too. I think I think everyone is a leader in their own right? It's just what society has said leadership is. And but anyway.
Well, because we need to lead ourselves, don't we?
Absolutely.
Like that's probably the most important soft skill to master, really.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, it's so interesting because I never really knew that. Like to me, if someone said, or like even when we're talking about leadership, we're talking about senior titles, right? Like I was always like, one day, like I remember as a new grad being like, I cannot wait to put senior in front of speech pathologists. I can't wait to be a senior speech pathologist. It was such a lame goal because really, really like it didn't really change much. But when I finally
such a uni mindset.
Yeah, it was a mindset thing. And it was the way that they set me up at uni and how I had sort of been conditioned, I guess, of what it meant. But I was like, and so I really thought that once I put senior in front of myself, then I was a leader. And then I was like, important or, then I had some status. But really, I wish going back to my younger self that someone had said to me, you are a leader right now. Like leadership is basically influencing people around you for good.
Yeah.
And we are always influencing someone, even if we don't want to, we're influencing people, whether we like it or not. And
I think it's, you go.
So you have to be able to lead yourself to get to that position of being a senior, and you have to be able to influence people positively.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's really interesting because I feel like in the early stages of our journey into leadership, it's about, it's coming from almost that insecure place of trying to prove yourself or that status, like you're saying. And I was exactly the same. I'm like, I want to be the manager. Why? But really in reality, leading is fairly selfless. Like, leaders eat last is that by Simon Sinek?
Simon Sinek, yeah.
Yeah. So it's, it's really interesting on what drives us to leadership and then the reality of leadership, because it's kind of that status and it might be more money and it might be, achievement focused. But really in reality, it's kind of the opposite. It's about having a really, laser focused team approach. So it's about the team and about the community. It's about, okay, what am I doing that's going to help the team now? Like almost really
you have
looking
to think about everyone.
of
you always like leaders eat last. That was it. You nailed on the head. Like you basically put yourself last, or you think about other people more than you think about yourself as a leader. And I really liked the definition, which I heard recently, maybe in the last 12 months, is that leadership takes sacrifice, and leadership, the biggest investment that you'll be required to make in a role of leadership is your time and emotions. And that's the thing, like time and emotions, they're some of the most important thing to us when we really come down to it, is our time, what we do with our time, and how we feel.
Yeah.
And that is often the biggest sacrifice as a leader. And like, don't get us wrong, like being a leader is so rewarding and so fulfilling. And it is a very privileged position to be in. And if that's what you're called to do, like in terms of being a leader and working with people, because obviously there's many different types of ways that we can be in leadership. It is very satisfying. But it's not for everyone. Like leadership is not for everyone in terms of leading people. But it is a sacrifice. But if it's the right role for you, then it doesn't become a sacrifice as much because it's very fulfilling. If I
Yeah,
said that right.
totally. Yeah. And I feel like for me, it's been a really, I guess, authentic kind of progress or progression, because you go from being driven to help your clients and progress your clients through to you kind of do that in a leadership role, but with teams. So I'm not taking clients, but I'm mentoring and helping my team to reach their best potential or their highest potential. So that's kind of how I frame it in my mind too. Like I go, okay, I might not be seeing clients, but which I love to do, but I'm doing that uh, in a way with my team.
Yeah, that's spot on. Like your focus changes. And
Mm,
sometimes you can have that dual role. Well, we've all done that. We've had the dual role where we focus on the clients and then we focus on the team, and we've sort of got that dual leadership role. That's also incredibly fulfilling as well. As long as you like working with people. If you don't like working with people, it might be challenging. But I think as well, leadership becomes more fulfilling as you have people under you flourish. And so
mm,
that's why it's so important to know that not every leader should be aligned with every mentee or every team. Like, and that's why it's so important to really choose who is going to lead you wisely, because the person who leads you really affects you. And again, if you're a leader, you really have a great influence on those people. But because we're all people, we all gel differently together. So you will gel better with some and thrive and flourish with other mentees or with other leaders, and some not so much. So I feel like best the best part of being a leader is when you see that flourish, those people flourish under you. And that's professionally and personally. Like it could be
mm.
either or both. But when people have their own breakthroughs, then that becomes their breakthrough for the leader. And that's what
Yeah,
makes it as important. But on the flip side, it can be very draining if you're not seeing that progress with someone, or you feel like you're not being given opportunities to flourish as a mentee with a leader.
yeah,
That can also
yeah,
be on the flip side very frustrating. And
yeah,
um, I think like it's something that we all tend to aspire to, but it would be good to chat about, like, if you're a new grad, what and you want to step into leadership at some point in your career, what do you do now? Because one thing that I have learned is that a title is just that, it's just a title. And a lot of people focus on the title, but you should be more focusing on the role and focusing on the things that you, Liz, said, like the things that it was so much more, the things that you're required to do before you get the title. So it sets you up to be successful as the leader and not just flounder them because you haven't got the skills to maintain being a leader.
yeah, yeah, totally. And I remember when I started out, like I was mature age. I went back and did human movement when I was 24. So when I got into the industry, I was like 27, 28. So might not have been like typical entry level sort of mindset. But I think I did this in my previous career. Like I sat down with my manager or my leader and shared that I was aspiring to be a senior or a manager. And I said, what do I need to do to get there? Like, and I think that's a really important conversation for a couple of reasons. One being you're putting it out to the world and to your direct report that you want to step up, and maybe that you want to step up and you just don't really know how to do that. And when you do that and say that, you're I guess creating an opportunity for that person that manages you to present to you what would be helpful and the steps in which they would consider appropriate if you're wanting that sort of role.
Yeah, absolutely. So what things are there?
What things can people be doing?
Yeah. So, or what questions could they be asking, or, in their workplace, or what could they be doing? What do you think? Or what would you have told your past self?
Oh, that's a good one. Or work on yourself, work on your
If
mindset,
you don't know
work
that
on
yet, after
yourself.
listening to our episodes and our podcast, work on yourself.
Oh, like, and there's so many Instagram memes about, the best thing that you can do is work on yourself. What I would say to myself is start reading, because I didn't start reading until I was probably early 30s, like literally hated reading prior to that, which is devastating to me because books have given me so much in the past 12 years. So I think, yeah, that would be my piece of advice, like to my younger self. Start reading and find some books that really resonate, because I've just learned so much from books.
Yeah. Oh, I've always been a reader. I love books.
Yeah.
Um, I was always that kid that mum was like, go to bed. And then I would have like, I don't even know what light I had because phones didn't exist back then. I don't think I had a torch, but I would be under the cover, like reading. I don't know what, or using like the hallway light, sitting in the hall, like in a little nook in the hallway reading. And mum's like, I thought you were in bed. I was that
So
child.
good.
But when we're saying work on yourself, so reading, obviously, like reading is amazing, but when you're reading, it's obviously reading personal development books or books on a certain topic, like time management or something like that, to improve your skills. But when we're saying work on yourself, there are obviously that comes from a personal approach, but we can take a professional approach to that as well, right? Like, so reading personal development books, like to improve your emotional intelligence, would be a personal type skill. But professionally, like working on yourself could look like thinking about your time at work and your time management, and thinking about how you can be more efficient with your tasks, more effective with people. So, like, have more meaningful relationships with people, and then be really efficient with your work. So, is there a better way to do something? Is there a
Mm,
quicker way to do something? Is there a better technology that you could utilize to make report writing easier, or to make progress notes quicker or faster or more automatic? Is there templates or systems or structures? Because they're all the hacks with, say, one area, which is time management. And time is the biggest sacrifice when you're a leader. So
mm,
really working on your time and being accountable to yourself, um, is something that you could do. Like, that's something really practical that you could
yeah.
do.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And I think, what you're talking about there is coming to bringing solutions and ideas with you. So, I think the first step is being clear about what you want to achieve and the path that you want to go on. And then I think something that you can be doing, and maybe a habit that you would create for yourself, is to bring ideas, be creative, bring solutions, be quite solution focused.
and if you're a person that struggles with that, like having new ideas, then piggyback off someone. It doesn't mean that you sit there and you don't have ideas. There's always someone we know, and we think, oh, that person's got really good ideas, or that it doesn't. It could be someone in the workplace, someone in your life, or even spitballing it with someone. It's just not sit. It's just basically not sitting there in your problem, right? It's going, well, if I'm not gifted to think of good ideas, I'm going to find someone who does, talk about my situation and see what they think. And then I might piggyback off that, or I might say to them,
Yeah.
am I able to use your idea? Because not all of us are created. And this was my other point I was thinking when we were talking about it, was genius zones. So
Yeah.
when me and Lizzie have been doing genius zones, and we've done genius zones in the Speak About Clinic, and you're going to roll it out with your girls
Yeah,
eventually.
we've done it.
So genius zones, everyone has a genius zone, which comes really easily. It really, you're passionate about it and you really love it. And so, like for me, that's invention is one of my genius zones.
Me too.
Um, but at the same time, then we also have things that are really frustrating for us. So that's what I'm saying. If invention is really frustrating for you, don't get yourself down. Don't think that you don't have something to offer. It's just that you need to piggyback off someone else, and you might have the strength then with all the details. Like, I'm not very good with details. So,
Me either.
or I can be, but I have to push myself. Whereas you might be better with details, and that's really your passion. And then you might bring the details to the invention. So it's just looking at knowing that there's always a way to do something better. It's just having that solution focused mindset, like you're talking about, Lizzy.
Yeah, and I think it's about knowing yourself, and having that self-awareness is really important, being curious about how you work. And I think, without maybe investing in doing the genius profiling or any of the personality profilings, which I highly recommend,
Yeah.
you can simply go through all the things that you do in your week and just identify the things that give you energy and the things that you really, really enjoy. And that's going to give you, a little bit of a clue as to the things that you're going to naturally thrive at.
Yeah. Yep. And we've got
Yeah.
a good podcast with Lorraine Murphy talking about energy management as well. So
Yes.
that if you want to dive into that more, like, you can listen to her episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's self-awareness, right, as well.
Yeah.
I think another thing that you can do is you can get better with public speaking and public
Mm.
presentation of yourself. So I don't know about you, Lizzy, but before I sort of had any official leadership role, I wasn't really aware of how I carried myself in meetings, carried myself in general. Like, I was aware how I carried myself with my clients, like when I say carry, like my body language and my presentation. But it was only when I first had the business and I started attending business conferences that someone actually educated me about, like, what you convey with your body, which it sounds like so basic, and I sound silly saying it, but whether you've got your arms folded or whether they're open, whether you've got your legs crossed, or like your legs open, not your legs open, like your legs crossed, or
But just how you're sitting
together.
and holding yourself,
Yeah, how
right?
you're holding yourself. And so I think it's really important that you're aware of what you're doing with your face, with your eyes, with your hands, with your arms, with your body. And this is something that you can get better with with clients. And it's very important. Like with my clinicians, I would be saying to them, you need to have an open body posture with your parents. Don't mimic what your parents are doing, which is often a very closed body posture because they're feeling very uncomfortable.
Yeah, they're anxious.
Consciously very pick up on these things. But to go I guess, to the step of moving into a leader or wanting to do that, get better with public speaking, get better with public presentation of yourself, and get better with being a bit more on the fly publicly. I think people think no one's in a big group of people think no one's watching me, but everyone is always watching everyone.
Totally. I think the message there is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I think when you're a leader, you're leading, aren't you? You're putting yourself first to learn and potentially fail, and that's okay.
You're always putting yourself out there because you're the leader, like you have to.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to be okay with failing. You have to be okay with looking silly. And that's that's some of our biggest insecurities, isn't it? Like how we're perceived. I know for me, it's, oh God, I'm going to look silly if I fail and fall flat on my face. Like I don't want people to know that I don't know what I'm doing. But that is part of being a leader. It's being vulnerable, isn't it? And I think it's being vulnerable, being curious about yourself and how you respond to situations so you can better learn how other people do. And just, it's all uncomfortable.
Yeah, because I mean, for most people, it doesn't come naturally to get up in front of a group of people and rally people and push. As a leader, you push people out of their comfort zones. That is not something that comes naturally to a lot of people. Like, most of the time, we just want to be friends with everyone. We want everyone to like us. But as leaders, as a leader, you cannot get everyone cannot like you.
Yeah.
If you try to do that, you basically end up pleasing nobody, and people tend to be unhappy. There's a good way to communicate things and have a team sort of positioning, but you're always feeling uncomfortable because you're having to put yourself out there, but then you feel uncomfortable because you have to push people out of their comfort zones as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting transition from being like a peer to being a more senior person in a team, because you've gone from being like matesy with everyone to then really needing to hold people accountable, which people don't really tend to like. And it's a real adjustment. So I think that's something to be really aware of if you're going through a transition into a more management position, that those friendships that you have. And I mean, this might sound bad, but I always say you can't be friends. You can't be like bum chum with, the people that you manage. So I mean, there's a way to do it, isn't there? And I think that we really need to be able to master ourselves when we're transitioning into that sort of management position to handle that transition. I think you need to be across that, because I think that's a really hard transition. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's a difficult transition. I don't know. I think I need to think about that. I think I used to have that opinion.
Mm,
Um, I th- I don't know. I used to have that opinion, and I felt like that's how I was brought up, like in different teams and workplaces that I was in. It was like we can't be friends with our leaders, and I feel like that's a traditional mindset.
yeah.
Lately, it has shifted for me.
Yeah.
And by lately, I think the last couple of years, because what I've found is when you have to have it's more if you have to have difficult conversations, right? Like that's where it's
Mm,
tricky. If everything's going fine, like there's no problem.
totally.
But in the
Totally.
difficult conversations, I have found that it is better. You do have to have a relationship, and it's two ways. It's not just the leader always making the effort. It's not just the employee making the effort, or whoever it is you're leading. But I do think it has to be a certain level of respect in the
Mm,
relationship, and I think it's like being open and teachable, both
yeah.
parties, because what happens is that the leader then can sometimes be like, well, I know it all, I don't need you to teach me, but that's
Yeah,
not the
but that's
truth.
someone who hasn't mastered themselves.
Yeah, but then the other way, the employee can also sometimes feel like I can't be vulnerable with you because I want to always put on a good front with you because
Yeah.
whatever, it contributes to my pay or something like that. And so,
Yeah.
but that's not the truth either. Like you have to actually be able to acknowledge your weaknesses, which is what you've been saying. And so I think that actually only comes through having a real genuine relationship. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't say be
Yeah.
bum chum, like you said, but
Yeah. I think it's
but
I
it's
think
it
it's
is
a it's
having
a
a meaningful
maturity thing.
relationship.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, this feels weird saying you can't be friends, but that's always kind of like
Yeah.
I feel like that is something to take into consideration when you're going through that progression.
Oh,
I don't
absolutely. I
feel like
agree.
that
Yes.
is
Yes.
where I'm at with my teams now. I feel like I feel like my teams, are like my family. Like it's a
Yeah.
really respectful, deep friendship, I guess,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we trust one another. But that has come through a lot of time, a lot of, deposits in the trust accounts
Mm.
in terms of, you know, um, having people's back and supporting them
People
and
feeling seen and known. Yeah.
yeah, and being vulnerable and creating a safe space where people can be vulnerable and be themselves. And because if you are creating leaders and that progression, you need to create a space where people can be comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's what is required.
Yeah, it's like that conflict that we were speaking about, right? It's like having healthy conflict. We're not being destructive, but we're not having artificial harmony. We're having good conflict so people can be themselves. Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah,
yeah.
I feel like that you
Yes.
can't be friends
But
is like an old school way of saying it, but it's just like something that's like I remember
yeah.
thinking when
Yeah.
I moved into that position. And I think that it's, you know, reframe it to whatever it needs to be. But I think it's something there's a transition period from being a peer into a leader. And I think that's where we need, and so I think mastering yourself from the get-go is going to really help with that transition. And I don't think that I did that before I went into management,
No,
into ownership.
if no one's told you, you wouldn't even
Yeah.
think about it. But that
Yeah.
is a good point. I do like that. That's a really good point that yes, you go from a peer up to another level. You'd be silly to think that there wouldn't be a change, but then don't think that reflects on you. Don't get caught up in that emotion and that emotional drama potentially because you're like, oh no. But I think it's just continuing to be genuine, continuing to be yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that the transition can be because we said before, like, don't wait for the title, right? So put your
Mm.
hand up first, take tasks, do things to put yourself out there. I know it's really taking opportunities, and in the
Yeah.
opportunities, you'll get so much gold from that yourself in your learning. But it's don't wait for that title. But in that transition period of not waiting for that title, just be okay. Like people might respond a bit differently. Everyone's, you can't judge everyone where they're at. But yes, I do think that's a really important point, Lizzy. It's just,
I think,
yeah,
yeah. And I think you bring the leadership mentality before you have the leadership title. So it's not about, I was going to say, assume the position before you've got it.
yeah,
It's not so much that, but it's assuming the leadership mentality before you've got that title. So if
yeah.
I'm looking for leaders in my team, I'm looking for the people that are going above and beyond. I'm looking for the people that are bringing me solutions. I'm looking for the people that are self-aware. I'm looking for the people that are creating a safe space. I'm looking for the people that are putting their hand up to go and, I don't know, do things that are not necessarily in their job description. Because that to me is just the characteristics of someone that is, has got leadership qualities.
Mm, mm, mm. Absolutely. You've just summed up the entire podcast with
So
all the points that we talked about. So yeah, I mean, there's loads of things like, so we've spoken about some of the things that would be good to focus on or to do, or to take that to your employer, have an honest and open conversation and say like, look, I want to work on my public speaking. Or I want to work on my, like, can you recommend some books to me? I want to work on my time management for the reason of becoming a leader. So, I mean, there's lots of different courses and books like we spoke about. Lizzy's webinars are really good to listen to, I think, as well. Like if you're wanting to, do you have any webinars specifically? I remember, I feel like
Oh,
you had a couple of webinars, but I'm like, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
oh, I can't think right now if I've got one on leadership, but I've got it sprinkled throughout my social media. So jump on my
Yeah,
socials.
socials. Yeah.
There's lots of like managing myself. I think I'm fairly open with my story, and
Yeah.
you know what? I just think my journey to leadership has been my journey to self. Like it without sounding
Leading
super
yourself.
wanky.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just think it wasn't until like my happiness in myself came, once I owned a business and I was really uncomfortable and I had no choice but to sort myself out. It was sink or swim, and I had to sort myself out. I had to read books. And to be honest, I read books every day now. The daily habits that I've got as a result of it and the mindset that I've got as a result of it is so worth the journey that I've been on.
That's lovely. That's beautiful. Um, I was just thinking, I think I've got a few videos on time management and understanding yourself inside the PLA library under some of
Nice.
the uh, not guest expert, but guest sessions that I did, because we've spoken about the things that new grads struggle with or people struggle with in their workplace, and one of those things was time management. But we hope that you have enjoyed this episode. You can, like we said, there's always other ways to reach out to us and find other information about us, or to learn from us in other ways. So you can just jump on our website, and we're really looking forward to the next episode. Leave us a review if you love this, and we'll see you next time.